Welcome, and thank you for joining this session of Innovation Institute 2021. With nearly 50 sessions available through the summer, we know you'll be discovering new skills, strategies, and resources to transform the teaching and learning in your classroom, and we would love to hear from you. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to visit the Town Hall in Attendify to connect with the attendees through the activity stream or community features. If you would like a certificate of attendance for attending this session, you will find the request form linked at the end of the session description in Attendify. Thank you, and enjoy this session from one of our amazing Innovation Institute presenters.
Well, thank you for joining us. This is Dr. Amy Holland, and we are thrilled to have you here at I2. I'm going to let you take it away and share your screen.
Okay, awesome. I have a couple of people to admit. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for logging on. I know at this point during the day, when I'm teaching, I'm exhausted. And now that we're on summer break, I tend to get a little distracted at our house. So I came up to my school to keep you guys from getting to listen to all of our animals that we have at our house. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. I am a tab porter. So if you are a tab porter as well, awesome. I apologize ahead of time for all of my mini tabs. My students are very much used to it at this point, for sure. So we're going to jump right in. This shouldn't take the whole 30 minutes unless you have questions. So basically, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. I live up in Northwest Arkansas in the Bentonville area. I teach in Centerton at Grimsley Junior High. And I have taught for quite a few years, almost 20, about 18, give or take. I teach so much in the summer that I get a little bit of extra credit, I guess you could say. My husband's a teacher in the district as well, so we like having the time off. I was a little jealous when he got to keep his pajamas on today and I had to get dressed to come up to work. So we have two kiddos. Peyton, he is a soon-to-be sophomore at Bentonville West, and then Eden is now headed to Bentonville West as a freshman. They both are learning how to drive, and it is mad chaos at our house, and it's very scary overall. So you can imagine if you have teenagers, it's never a dull moment. On the side, we do have a therapeutic horse farm, so we have about 30 to 40 students that come out and ride with us per week. Eden has ridden since she was 4, so she gives lessons as well. The most famous person or animal, I guess I should say, at our farm is Gus, our pig. He is very, very much sought after. Whenever the kids come out there, they like to feed him and watch him swim in his swimming pool. So it's kind of a fun thing for them. So I teach geography over at Grimsley Junior High, and I love it. But English is also a favorite of mine as well. So if you like to combine the two, this is a perfect workshop for you. I first found out about Google Lit Trips a few years ago, and I love using Google Earth in my classroom to do different things with the students. So a lot of times we will start the year out talking a little bit about geography and the ways that the world has changed from back when they first wrote these amazing stories, and we'll talk about one in particular, to today. And they are very interested to see the differences in the world and how it's changed over centuries. So we're going to kind of jump to the side here because you can absolutely listen to me as you go to this website. It is googlelittrips.org. So Google Lit Trips, basically what they are, they're KML files. But my favorite part is that I didn't have to put them all together. Somebody else did that for us. So you can go through and look at titles based on your grade level. You can look at titles based on your curriculum. But I always start the year out with Make Way for Ducklings, even with my 7th graders. And they laugh at me at first because I've taught so many different grades that sometimes I'll get siblings coming through, or this past year I had students that I had in 4th grade now with me in 7th grade. So they would make fun of Dr. Holland and her kids' books. But what we were actually doing is comparing with when the book was first written back in, gosh, I should have looked this up earlier. It was published in 1941. So back in 1941, how was Boston different than it is today? And Google Lit Trips allow you to do that. So you basically go and you can look at the different titles. And then if you look over on the left-hand side at Request a Lit Trip and click on it, you can, after you register, enter in your email and then scroll down and find the book that you would like to have a KML file of. And basically what it does is it takes you through each setting in the story on Google Earth without you having to do anything. It even has some pictures. We'll look at some things. And then you request it. It's free. It goes to your inbox. It takes about maybe 10 minutes max. If you don't get it in your inbox in 10 minutes, look in your spam. But whenever you get the email, I didn't want to show you all my emails concerning student privacy and things like that. When you get the email, it will end up taking you to Google Earth. And here you'll see I have a long walk to water because of my many tabs that I told you about. But here is Make Way for Ducklings. So on Make Way for Ducklings, it'll start the students out in Boston. Now you'll notice at the very first, it says view only. But if you will copy the project, that will allow you to share it with your students. You'll just make a copy and then give them the URL and they'll be able to copy it into their Google Earth. Right now it's view only because they don't want the students to put anything that they shouldn't put in there. And when you make a copy, it'll also let you change some things, because when they redid another story, they put a picture of a person in Africa and she did not have a shirt on. So I made sure to take that picture off. Depending on what grade level, of course, that you teach, that would not be appropriate for my 7th graders to view. So whenever I click on the first location, it takes my students to Boston, Massachusetts. It shows them a map of the city based on how they would have seen it back then. And then if I click the X and it gives you questions and things, I can start clicking on things and go into more detail. Now, whenever I teach Google anything with Google Earth, I always make sure to give them playtime before I have them go with me anywhere. It never fails that if I don't give them playtime, they will play anyway, and they're not with me on our trip. So that's one thing to make sure you do before you let them start playing. So next we go to the public garden, and I'll show them the book at the same time and say, look, what do you notice about our illustrations? What do you think was happening? Why do you think the ducks didn't want to live there? What do you think they thought of it? And we'll go through and look at it as it is today as well. Their favorite part usually is flying over to Beacon Hill from here. It's one of the favorites. And they get to see the old history. And if you've been to Boston, you know what that looks like and how cool it is to walk down those cobblestone streets as well. And we'll create discussions based on whatever the topic is. And then last but not least, we will go to where Michael helped them cross the street, and I'll let them go even further. But in the book, it's like a 2-lane road. So we talk about, okay, development within a city, and why do you think that now it is a 6-lane road? What do you know about Boston that would make that necessary? And then at the end, they love heading to the park to see the ducks as well. So this is always something that I love using Google Lit Trips. I also use it for Long Walk to Water. And in Long Walk to Water, we not only look at the different walks, but we even measure using Google Trips, or not Google Trips, Google Earth. And we'll take a look at how long Naya's walk was. And it'll even, if you notice down at the bottom of the screen, as I kind of go along, it's showing them how many meters I'm going. So at our school, when I taught at Fulbright, by the time we finished measuring Naya's long walk, that would have been, I think it was like to Springdale or something. That was, if we were to walk straight, it would be like a 30-mile walk or 20 miles. I can't remember what it is in the book, but I have them measured out since that book is not our focus, of course, with geography, but it is such a good book talking about the things that they've gone through as far as using geography and how hard it is for them in their culture. Any questions so far? Okay, so also with Google Lit Trips, and this is kind of a sidebar off of Google Lit Trips, instead of always using these, I will also have them search things up in Google Earth. Like we went to the pyramids in Egypt. And we've had quite the discussion with this, because in all the movies that you see, when they show the pyramids, they always show them as if they're out in the middle of nowhere, right? So we will look at some of the different pyramids and we'll fly into them. Well, if I would quit pushing so many buttons. Let me move my little guy here. Okay, there we go. So I'll put my little guy on one of the pyramids, and anywhere that you see that's blue, those are areas where you can fly in and it'll actually give you street view. So we're gonna head that way. So I'm within one of the towns right now, but if I were to kind of fly back out a little bit, they're always shocked to see that the pyramids, there's the Great Pyramid of Giza that is so close to town. So we will do a lot of zooming in, zooming out, and then we've even measured how far it is from one of the pyramids to the town, and they're always shocked to see that they would be able to see it within that. Like if we were at school, we would be able to see the pyramids from the classroom because it's that close. And my Google Earth has just shut down. Gotta love it, right? I'll even have them go in and do I'm feeling lucky. And it will spin the dice for them. And this one took me to Willow Creek. And I'm going to log out of this one and go back in and see if this will start to work again. My students also create their own KML files. So you can click on New Project and say we're studying the 5 themes of geography. I'll tell them, okay, I want you to create a project and I want you to do it based on the 5 themes. So one of those themes might be place, okay, or is, I guess I should say. And they will add a new feature, search, to find a place that they want to choose. And then here's the Great Barrier Reef. We're going to add it to the project. And mine's untitled at this point, and that's fine. But it's there later. If I wanted to title the project, there's my project, and I've started it right here. Now you can also click on the dots. You can delete the feature. You can, after you click on the feature, it gives you some other options to add to it, like adding a place mark if you want. Students get really creative. I usually don't have to help them with this, besides maybe helping them as far as finding the location, because they'll misspell it and then they won't be able to find what it is, or they'll search up something and it'll be like a Chinese restaurant in Chicago when they're actually trying to find it in China and it's an actual location in China that they're looking for. I'll have to help them that way. You can change your map style, so you can have it label everything for you, or no borders, no labels. And I'll use the no borders if we're talking about should borders change as well. And then measuring the distance, we use this with measuring like from the pyramids to town, and it'll tell them how many miles. And then after they figure out how many miles, we'll go to our school on Google Earth and we'll measure from there as well and see how far out that distance would be from our school to a certain location around school. It's short and sweet. That's what I do with my students a lot. They love it. They love using Google Earth for all sorts of things. But the best part really is using those lit trips and being able to not have to do all that work yourself. Instead, you have it saved, you go in and the students get to use it as well. And it has a lot of great questions and great photos to go with each question as well. All right, so I'm going to stop talking for a minute and see what you think. Is this something, if I can find my right tab, that you could use with your students? And do you have any other ideas for how to use it? Because I think we have, 30 people in here right now. So I'd love to hear your ideas of how you would use it in your classroom. Nobody want to jump out there?
Dr. Holland, I don't know if you have Attendify up. There's a few comments in Attendify. If you have that up, I think some of them are putting some of their chats and comments in there, and there's several. One was their third graders would love to make their own.
I see it now. Yes.
Okay, fabulous.
I'm drowning in my tabs today. I'm used to 2 screens, and since they took down all of my tech stuff, I don't have 2 screens, and I'd probably need it. Oh, I'm glad you guys like it. I went a little bit quickly with this, but it is something that you need time to actually go in and figure out which stories you would like to use and things like that. Yes, I had my second graders making these as well. Whenever I taught second grade, now it was much more difficult at the time to do a KML file. Google Earth is amazing now. And since a lot of our areas are one-to-one up here, it does make it easier that the students have their own Chromebooks. I can't emphasize enough that it's important to let them find their house, their personal house, before you try to start this. Let them play around with it. Let them look up the school. Most of the time the schools are still, if your school's new, it'll still be just a dot on a map with a field. But I found that is the best way to keep them focused whenever you're actually doing the lit trip. And you can also ask them to, on googlelittrips.org, you can ask them to go in and make one for you based on a different story. They have a lot of stories out there based on the different standards, but they are missing a few. There's a couple that I'd like to see them hit as well. You guys are making some great comments. I should have been on this from the very beginning. It would have helped me kind of slow down a little bit. I've also had them, and you guys, if you're on Google Earth as well, I've had them go to Singapore. that's another huge area for trade. And I know that depending on what you teach, it might not be appropriate, but Singapore is great. With geography, I'll have them watch the video Salem Neighbor. It's on Amazon. If you haven't ever seen it, it's a great documentary. I highly suggest you watch it. It's very eye-opening, but it's about the trouble over in Jordan and in Israel that they've had. And it talks about life in a refugee camp over in Syria. So our students will watch that, and then we will go to Google Earth and look at how close to the border the students are. Even though they're in the refugee camp in Jordan, they are still very close to the border, so they can still hear the bombing going on. Things like that are just an eye-opener whenever they can't. I mean, I can give them a map on paper, but when they can actually see pictures that bring it to life, of course, that's a lot better as well. Any questions overall? Robert, I saw your post just now. I haven't ever used it to go to power plants, but I have used it as far as looking at different city areas. Whenever we look at 9/11 with our students, we look at the video Boat Lift. It's on YouTube, and it's the boat drivers that came together when 9/11 happened, and they talk about their perspective on 9/11 and how they worked to get everyone off the island because they couldn't leave the island down by ground zero. So it's a great free video. It's about 30 minutes, but we'll look at Manhattan today and how strategic that was, and how it was important for them to all work together, mainly to not run over each other because there were so many boats in the harbor that day. So that is Boat Lift on YouTube. Oops. And then we have Salem Neighbor, and I'm sure it's Salon. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that because I learned it. I learn as I go with some of my vowels, but this one is Salem Neighbor. It's on Amazon Prime. There's also, by the same guys that produced that one, it's Living on $1 a Day. And this is a look. So these guys are fresh out of college, and they go down to Guatemala, and they live as if they were Guatemalans living on $1 a day, and we go day by day into their struggles. And so it's another great one. I made my own kids watch it just to kind of get them out of their little bubble that is the United States. It was a great look at South America for them, and my students love it. It's those two keep my students' attention throughout the whole video and their documentaries. So for 7th graders to stay tuned in, it's really nice. And they have some others that have come out, but I honestly haven't watched them to know if they're appropriate yet. All right, that's all I got, guys. If you have any other comments or questions, feel free to put them in the stream. And then I'm going to also put my email address in the stream as well. So if you have a issue come up or you have other questions, you're welcome to email me. And I'd be happy to help you with anything, even building those KML files. But just play around with Google Earth. They keep updating it and keep making life easier for educators. So it's a great tool for us as well.
Also, a quick reminder, Dr. Holland's session was recorded, and it will be placed here in the same spot on Attendify in a couple of days. So just know that if you missed anything at all, you can go back through and watch again. Thank you so much for presenting. It was very interesting. This is a tool I am not familiar with. So thank you. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you for your help too.
No problem. Does anyone else have any other questions before we close for today? Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you
No
so
problem.
much. Appreciate it. And thank you for your time. And it was great.
Awesome. You guys have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.